All right, welcome back to the waiting room with Dr. SEC. We're going to go back to the net hotline, and we've got a great guest for you today. First time on the show, but one of my favorite writers to read, David Ching with ESPN.com. Welcome to the show, David.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
Well, there's a lot of great games going around, and, of course, we know that you do a lot of work covering LSU. But I guess just real briefly, I want to take a couple looks at the game before we get to that really great game I'm looking forward to with LSU and Arkansas. But this Mississippi State-Alabama game, I mean, it looks like one of those games that has potential to really be a great one. Alabama plays much better at home. Mississippi State, some of the best playmakers in this league with Dak Prescott, Josh Robinson, and hopefully a healthy Jamion Lewis. But perhaps LSU wore down Alabama a little bit to make this game even better. Is this a game you're excited to watch this weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. I really think that Prescott and Josh Robinson can give Alabama some trouble. That zone read run that they do, if you look back at some of the games that Alabama has struggled the last couple of years, it's been that style of offense. And I think those guys can move the ball on Alabama and really make this an interesting game.
Absolutely. And looking at Dak Prescott, a guy I know you've been able to see quite a bit over the past several weeks. I mean, he's a guy that the first time I had a chance to see him was meet him in person was I was covering the Kentucky and Mississippi State game last year on Thursday night on ESPN. And Dak Prescott walked into the room, and he had something you can't really explain with words maybe, but he just has that it factor. He just kind of captivates a room when he walks in. And my question for you is this. Do you get that feel with Dak Prescott that he's just kind of, his personality, his makeup, he's just on a kind of different level than most people?
Yeah, I've only met him one time, so I don't know him. But I would definitely say the first time I saw him play, I thought, this kid's got something special. That was last year when they were playing Auburn. And, he almost single-handedly won in that game, it felt like. He's got a lot of Cam Newton in him. I'm sure that comparison's probably getting old, but, he's got that run-pass dynamic, that electric presence that I think is just different. It's just different than your average quarterback. And we're seeing that right now. The team, they haven't lost yet. He's kind of found their way to will them to win. Even when he wasn't healthy, in that last game, he still threw the ball well enough to get them a W.
Absolutely. Now, moving over to that LSU-Arkansas game, this is one I'm really excited about, even though it doesn't have the big high rankings. It doesn't have all of those things associated with it. It's a game that usually is pretty good just to start off with. And you wrote an article about it this morning talking about the running game that Arkansas has and LSU looking at that running game. But this is a game that really has that 1980s, 90s smash mouth football appeal to it.
Absolutely. It's two teams you're going to see run up in the eye. They're going to run straight at each other. Arkansas does have the occasional rabbit in Brett Dillon's hat that they'll pull out, the trick plays and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, it's not really built around trickery. We're coming right at you, and let's see what you can stop it. And I grew up in the 80s watching Bo Jackson and all those I formation smash mouth teams play. So I enjoy it. It kind of takes me back to when I was young, and SEC football was what it was for me. It's different than that now, and I think this will definitely be a throwback that'll be fun to watch.
Absolutely. And my question for you is this: being around the LSU program after this week, after seemingly having that Alabama football game won and letting it slip away once again, what is the mindset, do you think, of this LSU team? Are they able to kind of rebound and got their heads back on straight, or maybe is this thing kind of still lingering with them?
I'm sure it's lingering a little bit, but they're tough kids. That's one thing about Les Miles. I don't think they bring in too many softies into that program, and I don't think it will. I don't think it will be a problem for them on Saturday, like you might see with some places. I just don't think that's the mentality of kids that they bring to LSU typically. And another thing is, I'm sure they feel like they could have done things better to win the game.
Yeah.
So I think they kind of feel like it was robbed from them in some ways, and in that way, I don't know that the psyche would be quite as much of a problem for them. I think they feel like the referees and circumstances allowed them as much as anything, and I don't know. I kind of tend to think they don't feel as defeated as they might have if it was just a straight up loss.
Yeah, we're talking to David Ching with ESPN.com. Man, that is a great point because you look at the way the game ended with the penalties and maybe the no calls toward the end of the game. And Les Miles being the coach, I think is a huge thing because as much criticism as he gets from time to time for different clock management issues they've had or whatever the case might be over the years, I mean, you give anybody long enough resume or sample, you're going to find things you don't like. But as many criticisms maybe there's been, I think one thing that's true is he has a way of getting these guys up after things don't necessarily go their way.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the notes in their game notes package this week is that they're 25-1 since he's been there after a loss.
Wow.
So, it's very uncommon for them to drop 2 in a row.
Absolutely. And looking at this Arkansas team, of course, LSU has been really, really good against the run over the last several games. I think you noted in your article over the past 4 games, they're only giving up 109.3 yards per game on the ground. And Arkansas brings in a really good rushing attack, but it seems to me, and man, I mean, Williams has been good pretty much across the board, but it seems to me that Alex Collins has really kind of struggled in SEC play, really since he's kind of been there. He got going last week against Mississippi State with 93 yards, but before that, 31 against Georgia, 13 against Alabama, 68 in the opening game against Auburn. Has maybe Alex Collins has kind of turned that table? Maybe he's ready to start having those big games in the SEC now?
Yeah, I mean, that might be the case. They haven't really had to rely on him as much because Jonathan Williams is there too, and they've also really, surprisingly enough, thrown the ball more than we might have expected in some of these recent games. I think they threw it like 40 times against Alabama, which, for all the attention we give their run game, obviously they're trying to catch people off guard with putting it in the air a little more. And I guess playing from behind in some of those games has contributed to that too. But I agree. He has not been as productive as I would have expected him to be, but he's still young, and I think it's only a matter of time until that kid breaks through. He's so talented.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a fantastic football player sometimes. And again, you're right. I mean, he's in a system with another quarterback he's sharing snaps with and against teams that know they're going to run it most of the time. But I do want to talk about a couple more players. And once again, I appreciate you taking so much time with us. I want to talk about some of the young players because you put out a weekly thing that tracks the SEC freshmen. And of course, to me this year, it's far and away, it's Georgia and LSU with the best freshmen. I mean, Georgia last week, I mean, they could have made up a whole All-American, all-freshman team with Isaiah McKenzie and across the board, with Chubb and Sony Michel and Lorenzo Carter as well. But LSU is another team. And one of the reasons I didn't have LSU ranked as high going into the season wasn't because I thought they would finish really strong, but they were relying on so many key young players coming into the season. But it seems like they're really growing up pretty quickly. And so my question for you is this, covering this LSU team, have you kind of seen that growth from these young players from week to week?
Absolutely. And it's not just freshmen either. I mean, you look at a guy like Kendall Beckwith, who's a sophomore, that played a little bit last year, but not much. They put him in at middle linebacker when they're struggling at that position around midseason, and the defense really started to take off. Now, the guys that get much defense are obviously Leonard Fournette, who's really made a lot of efforts to start the season as far as reading blocks and things like that. And the receivers, Malachi Dupree and Trey Quinn, and then at safety, Jamal Adams, who I think is going to be an all-SEC kind of like a first-round pick eventually. Those are the guys that get a lot of attention. But, youth is not just the true freshmen that are playing their first year of college football. They were playing a lot of guys who had never been starters. And it was definitely early at times, early in the year, but you've got to give Miles and his staff a lot of credit. That team probably should have beaten Alabama last week. And I mean, they're just completely different than the one that we saw get walloped by Auburn. I guess we'll go on a marker now.
Absolutely. And it really seemed to me that pulling out that win against Florida, a game that they were, very fortunate to get out there with a win, seems like something just kind of turned on at that moment, maybe some confidence, whatever it was. But since that time, I mean, you're talking about beating Ole Miss, who was really playing as good as anybody in the country, and then really should have beat Alabama. I mean, it really is impressive. And I've always had respect for Les Miles, but it seems to me this is one of his best coaching jobs he's really done.
Yeah, I'd never really thought about that until about a week ago. One of my coworkers, Chris Lowe, wrote something like along those lines on the SEC blog on ESPN. And I thought, that's probably true. It's because of all the players that they've lost to the draft in the last couple of years. He definitely had to do more than I think he usually does. I mean, the roster is usually so loaded with talent, just older talent usually than it is right now. And I mean, they might wind up 8-4 this year, but the amount of progress this team made from week to week to week to now, I mean, it really has been impressive.
Absolutely, and the way they finished the way they should. Going to go in with a lot of expectations to next year. One last question, and once again, David, appreciate you taking so much time with us. This quarterback situation, Anthony Jennings, to me, he's a guy that has a lot of potential. I know his stats didn't look good last week, 8 of 26, 76 yards, 13 carries for 40 yards, but I was a little bit more impressed with him than others were because, I saw a lot of drop passes by the LSU receivers that didn't help him a whole lot. And secondly, 40 yards may not be all that impressive rushing, but those were 40 good yards and quality yards at quality times that he did. In your opinion, watching this, is Anthony Jennings the guy next year that can take them to the next level at quarterback?
I think he can be, but I think it really depends on what Brandon Harris does in the offseason. If he takes command of this offense, he's the more talented of the two players, and the two of them in the spring game. I mean, it's striking how big the difference was between the two of them. I think Jennings is a better leader. I think he's probably a better teammate. But Harris has NFL potential, and I don't think that's something that Jennings has. So it's his job as long as Harris is not ready to be a starting quarterback, and I don't think he is right now. But I expect Harris to mature some maybe this offseason and threaten for that job in the future.
Absolutely. Once again, we're talking to David Ching with ESPN.com. David, can you let our listeners, I mean, obviously they know how to get to you on ESPN. Can you let our listeners know where they can find you on Twitter?
Yeah, absolutely. At ESPN Ching, Ching, that's my Twitter account, and I'd love to hear from folks.
Absolutely. Once again, that's ESPN Ching, Ching, and I want to encourage all of our listeners to go over there because he does a great job, not just the LSU content, which is top-notch, obviously, but also I love some of the different SEC-type things he puts out during the course of a week, such as the freshman tracker we talked about. Just does a fantastic job of breaking those things down as well. David, thank you so much for joining us on The Waiting Room.
Glad to talk to you, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.